Welcome back to Phil Always Wins. Today we are going to break down the full card of UFC 327, Jiří Procházka taking on Carlos Ulberg. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, where I post my weekly betting tips for every UFC event. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I post weekly full card breakdowns of every UFC event. To kick off the card, we have a welterweight bout between Francisco Prado and Charlie Radtke, where I think that Radtke is going to win. Charlie is currently a favorite, sitting at a times 1.8, compared to Francisco, who's sitting at a times 2.45. But Charlie is currently 11-5. He's 4-2 in the UFC, with both of his losses coming by way of knockout to Carlos Prates and Mike Malott. Overall, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's not too bad on the feet, and he threatens takedowns and submissions from time to time, but he doesn't really shine anywhere, and the UFC seems to feed him dangerous prospects to sort of build them up for a knockout highlight reel. The thing is, Francisco Prado is nowhere near a dangerous prospect. He's currently 12-4, and he's 1-4 in the UFC, riding a 3-fight losing streak to literal no-names. The biggest name he's lost to is Zellhuber, which hasn't aged very well, and the biggest advantage Prado has in this fight is his youth. He's only 23 compared to Charlie, who's 35, but he doesn't have UFC level striking abilities, and he'll be looking to take Charlie down, but I think Charlie's takedown defense is good enough to keep this fight on the feet, where I think he wins on the scorecards via unanimous decision. Next up, we have the battle of the veterans between Kelvin Gastelum and Vicente Luque, where Vicente Luque is a massive underdog, sitting at times 3.25, compared to Gastelum, who's sitting at a times 1.36. Obviously, I think Gastelum's gonna win here. He's currently 21-10, and he's been fighting in the UFC since 2013, with 14 wins and 10 losses inside the UFC. He's a very experienced fighter who has never been knocked out despite fighting some pretty dangerous fighters such as Israel Adesanya, Joe Pyfer, Chris Curtis, Robert Whittaker, Sean Brady, and the list goes on. What I'm trying to say is he's a very durable fighter, and he has very quick hands as well, and usually succeeds in striking when he decides to dirty box. Now on the other hand, we have Vicente Luque, who is currently 23-12, and he's been fighting in the UFC since 2015, with 16 wins and 6 losses in the UFC. He's currently on a 2-fight losing streak, but he's also fought some pretty tough opponents such as Jalen Turner, he's fought Bilal twice, and he's also fought Buckley. Vicente definitely has the tools to win this fight. He's pretty well rounded, but he doesn't always make the best decision, so you have to question his fight IQ. He's definitely better on the ground, but I don't think he has good takedowns, and I reckon Gastelum is going to stun Luque into panic shooting before he gets the TKO win in round 2. Moving on, we have a lightweight bout between Marquel Mederos and Christopher Padilla, where Padilla is sitting at a times 1.6 and Marquel is sitting at a times 2.34. I personally think that Christopher is going to win. He's currently 17-6, and he's unbeaten in the UFC with a record of 4-0. He's a very well-rounded fighter, but his strength is definitely his ability to dictate the pace of the fight, where he doesn't slow down, which makes it hard for his opponents to deal with. He's more comfortable fighting a stand-up fight, and despite both of these fighters currently being on a winning streak, Chris Padilla seems to be the more dangerous fighter because he's actually finishing his opponents. Marquel Mederos is 11-1, he's 3-0 in the UFC, but all of his wins have come by decision. He's also a decent striker who's able to mix in some wrestling, and both of these fighters are quite durable. I just think that Christopher's the more complete fighter, he's more well-rounded, and I reckon that he's gonna put on the pressure, land the bigger shots that'll win him the fight on the scorecard. Next up, we have a women's strawweight bout between Tatiana Suarez and Godinez Lupita, where I think Tatiana Suarez is gonna win. She's currently a favorite, sitting at a times 1.66, while Lupita is an underdog, sitting at a times 2.29. Tatiana Suarez is 12-1, she's 8-1 in the UFC with 4 submission wins. She's primarily a grappler, and her whole game plan in every fight is to take you down, tire you out, and if she can't find the submission win, then she'll win from control time. Despite being a very good grappler, we have seen her shoot some sloppy takedowns when she tends to get tired, and Loopy has pretty decent takedown defense herself, so if Loopy can keep this fight on the feet, it could be pretty problematic for Tatiana Suarez. But Loopy is 14-5, she's 6-4 in the UFC, and she's the better striker coming into this fight, and she also has the ability to grapple. Now on paper, Loopy sounds like the better fighter, but I think Tatiana Suarez just has way more experience fighting higher level opponents, with her only loss being to Zheng Wei Li, and I think Loopy is good enough to avoid the submissions, but she'll lose a unanimous decision. Next up, we have a pretty interesting fight between Mateusz Gamrot and Esteban Ribovics, where I'm surprised that this fight is not on the main card, but Ribovics is sitting at a times 2.6 as an underdog, and Gamrot is sitting as a favorite at times 1.5. But I think Gamrot is going to win. He's currently 25-4, he's 8-4 in the UFC, and he's a top contender who's fought a lot of the higher ranked opponents like Arman Tsarukyan, Rafael Fiziev, and Charles de Bronx in his last fight where he lost via submission. Gamrot is a very sticky grappler, and this is a massive downgrade in competition, but that doesn't mean that Esteban is a bad fighter. Esteban is a very dangerous striker, and he's the better fighter on the feet in this matchup, but he's currently 15-2, he's 4-1 in the UFC, and he has wins over some good fighters such as Terrence McKinney, Zell Huber, but they aren't top contenders. Gamrot definitely has the experience and grappling advantage coming into this fight, and the fact that we haven't seen Esteban's takedown defense or grappling been tested yet makes me think this is going to be an easy 15 minutes of Gamrot hugging Esteban on the ground, and I reckon Gamrot's going to get the win via unanimous decision. Next up, we have a welterweight bout between Kevin Holland and Randy Brown, and this is another fight that I'm surprised is not on the main card, but Kevin Holland is a slight underdog sitting at a times 2, compared to Randy Brown, who's a slight favorite sitting at a times 1.8. I keep going back and forth on who's going to win this fight, but I think I'm going to settle with Randy Brown. He's currently 20-7. He's 13-7 in the UFC, coming off a knockout loss to Gabriel Bonfim in round 2. Brown is a very rangy fighter who throws with intent, and he has a lot of power, and he looks like he's the bigger fighter in this matchup. Despite being a talented kickboxer, the one thing that I don't like is that he tends to have a very strong round 1 and then slows down in round 2 and round 3, where I think that Holland has the best opportunity to finish him. Now, Kevin Holland is one of my favorite fighters, and he's currently 25-15. He's 10-11 in the UFC, so he has more losses than wins. But Holland is a fighter who's just always willing to fight, and he's beaten some high-level fighters such as Anthony Hernandez and Buckley, but he's also lost to fighters which he's not supposed to lose to, which kind of makes him an unreliable fighter to bet on. Sometimes Kevin just doesn't do enough, and I trust Brown's aggression and volume to get the win on the scorecards. I do think it's going to be a very close fight, and I think Randy Brown's going to win via split decision. Next up, we have the battle of the Bellator fighters. We have Aaron Pico taking on Patricio's Pitbull, where Pico is a massive favorite sitting at a times 1.3, and Pitbull is a massive underdog sitting at a times 3.5. I do think that Aaron Pico is going to win this fight. He's currently 13-5. He's 0-1 in the UFC, coming off a brutal spinning elbow KO by Leron Murphy in round 1. But Pico is a very well-rounded and aggressive fighter, and in my opinion, he's better than Patricia's Pitbull no matter where this fight goes. He's got the wrestling advantage, he's the faster and more aggressive striker, and he's also 9 years younger than Pitbull. Pitbull is already 38 years old with a record of 37-8, 1-1 in the UFC, coming off a decision win against Dan Ige. I did predict him to win that fight against Dan Ige, and I cashed on him as an underdog, but to be honest, I wasn't too impressed by his performance. I reckon he's going to get outclassed here, and I think Aaron Pico is hungry for a redemption fight after his last loss. So I reckon Pico's going to get the KO in round 2. And just like that, we are on the main card of the evening where we have a featherweight bout between Cub Swanson and Nate Landwehr. And the odds have them as a pick'em. They're both times 1.9, but I am going to favor Cub Swanson to get the win here. Nate Landwehr is 18-7, he's 6-6 in the UFC, and he's a decent fighter on the feet. Nate is currently rocking a 2-fight losing streak where he got knocked out by Morgan Charrier in his last fight. He was actually not doing too bad in that fight, especially as a plus 250 underdog, up until he got knocked out. But he's facing a veteran in Cub Swanson who's 30-14, and he's already 42 years old, but he has fought the better fighters, and overall, I think he's a better striker than Nate. The only thing that I don't like about Swanson is he fights with his hands pretty low, so he could eat a fight-ending punch at any given moment, and in my opinion, this fight could literally go either way. I'm just favoring Swanson simply because of his experience advantage, and I reckon he gets it done on the scorecard 29-28. Next up, we have the battle of the glass chins in Johnny Walker taking on Dominick Reyes, the only guy to beat Jon Jones, where Dominick Reyes is a slight favorite sitting at a times 1.72, and Johnny Walker is an underdog sitting at a times 2. I do think that Reyes is going to win this fight, but Johnny Walker is currently 22-9, he's 8-6 in the UFC, and coming into this fight, I think that Walker's biggest advantage is definitely his athleticism and aggression. He's a very unpredictable fighting style, and he kind of just throws whatever he feels like throwing, and that may work against a fighter like Reyes, who tends to fight hesitantly, especially when he gets overwhelmed or intimidated. Reyes, on the other hand, is currently 15-5, he's 9-5 in the UFC, and although it doesn't look like it, Reyes has a lot of power in his hands, with 6 knockouts in the UFC. I think Reyes has the power advantage and the chin advantage. Although both of their chins are quite chinny, I do think that Reyes' chin is slightly better, and if Reyes isn't too hesitant to throw like he was in his last fight against Carlos Ulberg, then I reckon he'll find the glass chin of Johnny Walker and win via KO in round 2. Next up, we have a heavyweight bout between Josh Hokit and Curtis Blaydes, where Hokit is currently sitting as an underdog at times 2, and Blaydes is sitting at a slight favorite at times 1.74, and I think that Hokit is going to get the win here. He's one of those big fighters who has unexpected speed and power in his hands, and although we haven't seen his wrestling being tested all too much, I actually think he's good enough to defend the takedowns in this fight, and if Curtis can't bring this fight to the ground or to the clinch, then I think he's going to lose. Curtis is obviously a veteran of the sport who's seen it all, and his record stands at 19-5. He's 14-4 in the UFC, which is quite impressive. He's a pretty well-rounded fighter, and he has some knockouts on his resume, but unlike Josh Hokit, he doesn't rely purely on his power to win fights. Coming into this fight, he's definitely going to be planning to take Hokit down while he's still fresh, and try to tire him out and slow him down to avoid being knocked out. But in Curtis' last win against Kunaev, I didn't like his body language from the end of round 2 to round 3, where he just decided to stand there and eat shots. And if you decide to be a sitting duck, even for a minute, against a power puncher like Hokit, then he's simply going to knock you out. And so I don't think that Curtis Blaydes is going to have the stamina to keep up the pace of the wrestling, and I think he's going to slow down and get knocked out in round 3. And for the co-main event of the evening, we have Paulo Costa taking on Azamat Mrzakanov, where I think that Mrzakanov is going to get the win, but I do think that Paulo Costa has a pretty good chance. Now, Paulo Costa is an underdog sitting at a times 2.6 compared to Azamat, who's sitting at a times 1.5. Azamat is currently 16-0, and he's a massive UFC prospect who's currently on a 6-fight winning streak in the UFC, with 5 of them coming by way of knockout. Azamat has very quick hands and they pack a lot of power, which is evident given how many KOs he has. Even in his last fight against Dustin Jacoby, although it went the distance, he hurt Jacoby badly 2 times in that fight in round 1 and round 2 before winning a unanimous decision win. The only critique I have on him is that he starts to slow down after round 1, and maybe that's because he lacks experience in fights going the distance, because he usually wins in round 1. But Paulo Costa is a very experienced kickboxer who gets better as the fight progresses, and if this fight goes the distance, I could see Costa turning it around from round 2 and onwards. Costa is currently 15-4, he's 7-4 in the UFC, with all his losses coming to high-level stand-up fighters such as Adesanya, Strickland, and Robert Whittaker. Costa definitely has the experience and cardio advantage, hence why I think this is going to be a very close fight, but I think Azamat will have the bigger moments in the fight and win via decision. And just like that, we are on the main event of the evening, where we have Carlos Ulberg taking on Jiří Procházka, and this fight is a pick'em as they are both standing at times 1.9, but I am favoring Jiří to get the win here. Jiří is currently 32-5, he's 6-2 in the UFC with 5 knockouts and 1 submission, and his only loss has come to the current champ, Alex Pereira. Jiří has a very weird fighting style, which a lot of fighters struggle to break down. He fights with his hands very low, and he tends to throw whatever he feels like throwing, which can be very hard to fight because he's very unpredictable. Not to mention, he has tremendous power, but I think on a technical standpoint, Carlos Ulberg is the better fighter, but I don't think that Olberg is going to be able to handle Jiri's odd style. Olberg is a talented stand-up fighter whose current record is 14-1. He's 8-1 in the UFC, but in all honesty, he doesn't impress me all too much. I wouldn't say he struggled to beat Han Blachowicz, but he didn't make it look easy, and Jiri has faced way better competition, and if we compare who they're both knocking out, it doesn't even come close. Jiri has knocked out Roundtree, Jamal Hill, Volkan, and so on, while Olberg's most impressive knockout is Dominick Reyes, who is known to have a glass chin. We've also seen Olberg empty the gas in round 1 where he tried to get the finish, but when he was unable to, he ended up getting knocked out. I reckon Olberg will have the better round 1, but if he doesn't get Jiri out in round 1, I think Jiri picks up the pace and finds the knockout in round 2 or round 3. And that's gonna do it for my full card breakdown of UFC 327, Jiri versus Olberg. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram so that you guys can be the first to know about my weekly UFC betting tips. And don't forget to subscribe to me so that you guys could be the first to know when I upload my weekly UFC breakdowns. Peace.